My own breath hitched, trapped somewhere between my throat and my hammering heart. Disbelief. That was the first wave. Cold, numbing disbelief washing over me as the sound registered. The distinct, final click of the deadbolt sliding home. From the inside. Of my house. My safe place. My inheritance. My life. Suddenly it wasn't mine anymore. The January air, sharp as shattered glass, bit at my cheeks, instantly stealing the warmth from the tears that sprang to my eyes. One thin sweater. Utterly useless against this brutal cold and even more useless against the chilling realization that they'd actually done it. Mark. My own flesh and blood. They'd smiled, they'd helped, they'd offered comfort. And all along they were plotting this. Standing there on the icy pavement, staring at the warm glow behind my curtains, I felt utterly, terrifyingly adrift. They'd stripped me bare, not just of my home but of my trust, my security, my sense of belonging in the world. They thought they'd won. They pictured me disappearing into the freezing night, defeated, broken. A ghost haunting the edges of their triumphant new life. They couldn't have been more wrong. Life before, it seems almost dreamlike now. Sunny, simple, maybe a little naive. My name is Sarah and I was 26, finally feeling like I had my feet under me. As a freelance graphic designer, I wasn't exactly rolling in dough, but I paid my bills, fueled my coffee addiction, and most importantly, I worked from home. Home was the anchor. A small, unassuming two-bedroom bungalow, nestled on a street lined with sleepy, mature trees. It wasn't fancy, not by a long shot. When my grandmother, Nana, passed away 2 years earlier and left it to me, it needed, well, everything. But I embraced the challenge. Every spare moment, every extra dollar, went into sanding those beautiful old hardwood floors until they gleamed, painting the walls in cheerful, hopeful colors, coaxing life back into the neglected garden until lavender and hydrangeas spilled over the pathway in the summer. It smelled faintly of lemon polish, old paperbacks, and the ghost of Nana's humming. It was more than just wood and plaster. It was my sanctuary, my independence made manifest. After Nana's passing, my world felt a bit smaller. My parents lived clear across the country, absorbed in their own lives, and other relatives were distant memories. Except for my cousin Jessica. Jessica, a few years older, married to Mark, suddenly reappeared in my life like a long-lost friend. Growing up, we'd run in different circles, but now she was all comforting hugs and concerned inquiries. They lived in a perpetually cramped apartment across town, their conversations often circling back to nightmare landlords and thin walls. They seemed genuinely thrilled for me about the house. Oh, Sarah, Nana would be bursting with pride. Jessica would effuse, settling into my kitchen as if she belonged there. Mark, quieter, always seemed to back her play, offering a helping hand with a leaky faucet or wrestling the lawnmower out of the shed. Initially, their presence felt like a balm. It was company. A buffer against the loneliness that sometimes crept in. They'd bring over tuna casseroles, remember my birthday with cheap but thoughtful cards, and frequently mention their own tight budget, which made their offers to help seem incredibly generous. I let my guard down. They were family. Family helps family, right? That's what I told myself. Looking back, the red flags were there, fluttering faintly on the periphery. But I was too busy painting walls, meeting deadlines, and simply being grateful not to be entirely alone. The shift was subtle at first, insidious. It began with seemingly innocent remarks, dropped like casual pebbles into the calm pond of my life. Wow, Sarah, property taxes in this area are just insane, Jessica commented one afternoon, stirring sugar into her tea, her eyes scanning my newly painted living room. Must be tough keeping up with everything on a freelancer's budget. Mark would nod sagely. Older houses, you know. Always something unexpected cropping up. Plumbing, wiring, it adds up fast. You managing okay with it all? Financially, I mean. It sounded like concern, but there was an underlying current, a probing quality that made my skin prickle slightly. Were they worried about me or were they fishing? Then came the more direct offers, wrapped in the guise of easing my burden. You know, Sarah, Jessica suggested one evening, her voice bright and helpful, Mark is brilliant with numbers. Seriously, a wizard with spreadsheets. Why don't you let him take a look at the household bills for a bit? Just to help you set up a solid budget. take some pressure off while your design business is taking off. I felt a knot of resistance tighten in my stomach. I was managing. My client list was growing slowly but surely. I wasn't rich, but I wasn't drowning either. But saying no felt awkward, ungrateful, defensive. "Oh, I don't know, Jess," I started, trying to sound casual. "It's really not that bad." "Nonsense." Mark interjected quickly, giving my shoulder a overly familiar squeeze. "It's no trouble at all. We can just set up online access, make sure nothing gets missed. Think of it as family teamwork." The pressure was gentle but persistent. They made me feel like refusing was rejecting them, not just their offer. Against my gut feeling cornered and slightly ashamed of my hesitation, I caved. I gave them the login details for the utilities, the property tax portal. Just to look, I told myself. Just to help organize things. It felt wrong surrendering that control, but I pushed the feeling down. Family wouldn't exploit that, would they? Around that same time, odd little things started happening. I spent an entire frantic afternoon searching for a crucial file folder containing the house deed and insurance documents. It wasn't where I knew I'd left it in my desk. Jessica eventually found it tucked away in a kitchen drawer amongst the placemats. "Oh, you poor thing, you must have been exhausted," she'd sympathized, patting my arm. "You're juggling so much." Too much? Or was someone deliberately moving things? A chill snaked down my spine, but I dismissed it. Paranoia. It had to be. That initial concession, giving them access to the bills, opened a door I couldn't seem to close. Their help became increasingly intrusive. Jessica started using the spare key I'd given them, just in case of emergency, with alarming regularity. I'd be deeply focused on a design project upstairs, headphones on, only to come down for coffee and find Mark fiddling with the thermostat, muttering about efficiency, or Jessica rearranging my bookshelf because she thought it looked cluttered. "Just trying to make things nicer for you, sweetie," she'd chirp, that smile never quite reaching her eyes. My polite protests were met with wounded looks. "Sarah, we're only trying to help shoulder the load. This house is a big undertaking for one person." It felt less like help and more like colonization. They started making decisions without even pretending to consult me. One morning I woke to the sound of digging. A landscaping crew was tearing out Nana's beloved, established hydrangea bushes, the ones that bloomed in vibrant blues and pinks all summer long. In their place, they were planting generic, spiky, low-maintenance shrubs that looked completely out of place. I stormed outside, demanding an explanation. Mark, leaning against his car, which looked suspiciously newer than I remembered, feigned surprise at my fury. "We're improving the curb appeal, Sarah. Increasing the property value. Plus, think of the water savings." He sounded genuinely baffled that I wasn't grateful. My fury dissolved into a helpless, choked feeling. They were systematically erasing my choices, my tastes, even Nana's memory from my own home. Simultaneously, they began subtly poisoning my other relationships. Casual remarks dropped here and there to neighbors or extended family about how stressed I was, how I seemed overwhelmed and not quite myself lately. An old college friend mentioned offhand that Jessica had told her I was going through a really tough patch and needed space, which explained why my recent emails had gone unanswered. They were isolating me, painting me as incapable, making themselves seem indispensable. Then the financial oddities became undeniable. Not huge amounts, not initially. An electricity bill that seemed 50% higher than usual. Mark waved it away as seasonal adjustments. A recurring charge on my credit card statement for a streaming bundle I never used. Jessica claimed she'd added it to my account by mistake when setting up her own and promised to fix it. She didn't. Plausible deniability was their shield. But the pattern was undeniable. And I started noticing their finances improving dramatically. Jessica, who constantly bemoaned being broke, flashed a new designer handbag that cost more than my monthly grocery budget. Mark was definitely driving a newer car, a sporty sedan he claimed he got a great deal on through a work bonus I knew his job didn't offer. When I pressed gently about the car, he became defensive, muttering again about that mysterious distant relative's inheritance. The knot of suspicion in my gut tightened into icy certainty. They were stealing from me. Timidly at first, then with more force I tried to reclaim control. I told them I appreciated their help, but I was ready to manage my own finances again. I asked for the spare key back, saying I wanted to install a new security system. The warmth vanished from Jessica's eyes instantly, replaced by a cold appraisal. Don't be silly, Sarah. After everything we've done? Why are you suddenly being so suspicious? It's hurtful. Mark just crossed his arms, a silent, looming presence. Their concern wasn't protective, it was possessive. They weren't helping me, they were trapping me. My attempts to push back were like struggling in quicksand. The more I fought, the deeper I seemed to sink into their web of manipulation. When I firmly demanded Mark hand over the bank statements and utility account logins he now controlled, the excuses became laughably transparent. The bank's online portal is having technical issues, he'd say one week. I forgot the damn password, need to reset it, the next. Still waiting for the paper copies, the mail is so slow these days, the week after. He stalled, deflected, and patronized me, treating my valid concerns like childish paranoia. Jessica, meanwhile, perfected her role as the wounded party. She'd corner me when Mark wasn't around, tears welling in her eyes. Sarah, I don't understand why you're treating us like this. We love you. We stepped up when no one else did. Why are you trying to push us away? Do you think we'd ever do anything to hurt you? Her performance was convincing enough to plant seeds of doubt. Was I being unreasonable? Was I misinterpreting their intentions? The gaslighting was relentless, designed to make me question my own sanity. But the missing money was real. Driven by a desperate need for proof, I bypassed Mark completely. I went directly to my bank branch, armed with my ID and a growing sense of dread. It took some time, explaining the situation carefully to a sympathetic manager, but I finally regained online access to my own accounts. Scrolling through the transaction history felt like being punched repeatedly in the gut. It wasn't just inflated utility payments. There were direct transfers, small at first, then larger, to an account number I didn't recognize. Payments made towards credit cards that weren't mine. Withdrawals disguised as household repairs for work that was never done. It was methodical, calculated. Thousands upon thousands of dollars siphoned away over months. My inheritance, the safety net Nana had left me, systematically plundered. The full, sickening weight of their betrayal crashed down on me. While I was grieving, while I was trusting, while I was welcoming them into my home, they were robbing me blind. Before I could even fully process this discovery and figure out my next move, they dropped the final bomb. They called an urgent family meeting. Just the three of us, seated around my dining room table. The air felt thick with false gravity. Jessica slid a thick stack of professionally printed documents across the polished wood towards me. Her expression was a careful mask of sorrowful necessity. Sarah, she began, her voice oozing fake sympathy, we need to talk seriously about the future of this house. My blood turned to ice water. I knew with chilling certainty what was coming. Mark cleared his throat, taking over. Look, it's become clear you're struggling to manage things. And considering the significant financial investment we've made, he emphasized the we, in repairs, upgrades, paying off some unexpected debts Nana left. Debts? Nana? Impossible. She was frugal to a fault. And factoring in the ongoing support we've provided, he continued, bulldozing over my attempt to protest, we felt it was necessary to formalize the arrangement. Our lawyer drew this up. It basically gives us joint ownership, recognizing our contribution and protecting our investment. He slid the top page closer. It wasn't joint ownership. It was a quitclaim deed, transferring the entire property title to them. And there at the bottom was a signature. My signature. Or a terrifyingly accurate forgery of it. Notarized and dated 3 months prior. I remembered them vaguely asking me to sign some updated insurance forms around that time, rushing me, saying it was just routine paperwork. My stomach churned. I never signed this. I whispered, my voice trembling as I pushed the papers away. This is fraud. You forged my signature. Jessica's mask of sympathy finally cracked, revealing the hard, avaricious face beneath. Oh, Sarah, she sighed dramatically, shaking her head. Your memory must be playing tricks on you again. You were so stressed back then. We have witnesses, friends who were visiting, who saw you sign it. You were so relieved to have our help securing the property. Lies. All of it. Calculated, cruel lies. Mark leaned forward, his voice dropping to a low, menacing growl. Face facts, Sarah. The house is ours now. Legally. We're being generous letting you stay here for the time being as long as you cooperate. But make no mistake, we are in charge now. The sheer audacity, the depth of their treachery left me breathless. They hadn't just stolen my money, they'd stolen my home, my roots, my entire sense of security. I scrambled to find a lawyer, scraping together funds for a consultation. The legal aid attorney listened patiently, his expression growing increasingly grim. Yes, the signature looked suspect, but proving forgery against determined liars with witnesses and seemingly legitimate notarization would be an uphill, incredibly expensive battle I couldn't afford. He spoke of liens, countersuits, years in court. Hopelessness began to wrap its suffocating tendrils around me. How could I possibly fight this? They had planned it too well. The eviction notice arrived less than 3 weeks later. Delivered by a courier, stark black print on cheap paper. They hadn't even bothered with the lengthy court process the lawyer had mentioned. They'd used their fraudulent ownership documents and fabricated claims about my instability and supposed failure to meet fictitious agreements to get an expedited order. It was a cold Tuesday evening. A light, hesitant snow had begun to fall, dusting the skeletal tree branches and muffling the city sounds, creating a false sense of peace. Then came the sharp rap on the door. 2 uniformed marshals stood on the porch, their expressions impassive. Behind them, bundled in a new, ridiculously expensive-looking faux fur coat, stood Jessica. Mark lingered near the steps, refusing to meet my eyes. You have to leave the premises immediately, Sarah, Jessica stated, her voice flat, devoid of any human warmth. The house is no longer yours. I pleaded, argued, frantically showed the marshals my original deed, Nana's will. They glanced at it sympathetically but shook their heads. Their hands were tied by the court order Mark waved like a trophy. 10 minutes, one of them said gruffly. Get your essentials. 10 minutes. How do you pack a life in 10 minutes? I moved through the rooms in a daze, numb shock overriding panic. My hands felt like clumsy blocks of wood as I fumbled through drawers, grabbing random clothes, my laptop, chargers, shoving them into a worn canvas backpack. Every familiar object, a chipped mug, a framed photo of Nana, the worn armchair, seemed to mock me, screaming of the life being stolen. Jessica watched me from the doorway, arms crossed, face like stone. As I stepped back onto the porch, clutching the pathetic bag containing the fragments of my existence, Mark quickly stepped inside and slammed the door shut behind me. The final, definitive click of the deadbolt echoed in the sudden, chilling silence. They peered out the living room window, silhouettes framed against the warm light, watching me stumble down the icy steps onto the darkening sidewalk. The cold was immediate, visceral, sinking into my bones through the inadequate sweater. Tears blurred my vision, freezing almost instantly on my lashes. Where could I go? What could I possibly do? Defeated, I sank onto a cold, snow-dusted park bench directly across the street. My house, their house now, loomed before me, windows glowing like smug, indifferent eyes. Despair washed over me, thick and suffocating. Then my gaze drifted. At the far end of the same bench, huddled against the wind, sat an older woman. She was dressed in layers of worn, mismatched clothing, a thin, threadbare blanket pulled around her shoulders. She looked desperately cold, shivering uncontrollably. Her face was lined and weary, but her eyes, when they briefly flickered towards me, held an unexpected sharpness, a spark of keen intelligence that seemed incongruous with her apparent situation. She looked towards my former home, then back at me, a silent question in her gaze. In that moment, despite my own crushing despair, a strange pang of empathy resonated within me. She looked so utterly vulnerable. Acting on pure instinct, I unwound the scarf from my neck. It was soft wool, knitted by Nana in shades of blue and gray, one of the few sentimental items I'd managed to grab. It still held the faint scent of Nana's lavender sachets. I walked the few steps towards her and held it out. Here, I mumbled, my voice thick. Please. You look like you need this more than I do right now. Surprise flickered across her features, quickly followed by a small, hesitant smile that crinkled the corners of her eyes. Why, thank you, dearie, she said, her voice raspy but kind. That's remarkably generous of you. She took the scarf with trembling fingers and wrapped it gratefully around her neck, burying her chin in its warmth. We sat in shared silence for a moment, the only sounds the sighing wind and distant traffic. Then she turned slightly towards me. Having a bit of a rough evening, are we? Her tone was gentle, inviting confidence. That simple kindness cracked the dam. The whole sordid story poured out of me. The inheritance, the manipulative cousins, the gradual takeover, the stolen money, the forged signature, the sudden eviction into the freezing night. I wasn't expecting solutions, just perhaps a shared nod of understanding, the camaraderie of the down and out. She listened intently, her sharp eyes never leaving my face, absorbing every detail with unnerving focus. When I finally fell silent, emotionally exhausted and shivering again, she didn't offer platitudes. Instead, after a long pause, she asked, her voice suddenly losing its frail edge, acquiring a surprising firmness, "These cousins, Jessica Miller and Mark Chin, you said?" I nodded, confused. "Yes. How did you know their last names?" A strange, almost calculating glint appeared in her eyes, chased by a wry smile that transformed her face, hinting at hidden depths. "My dear," she said, her voice now imbued with an quiet authority that made me sit up straighter, "allow me to introduce myself. My name is Eleanor Vance." The name hit me like a physical jolt. Eleanor Vance? The Eleanor Vance? The legendary, almost mythical real estate magnate? The reclusive billionaire philanthropist whose company owned half the skyscrapers gleaming against the night sky? It seemed impossible. This woman huddled on a park bench? But the steel in her gaze, the sudden, undeniable aura of command, it was real. She saw the utter disbelief warring with dawning hope on my face. "I find," she continued, her voice softening slightly as she touched the scarf around her neck, "that one gets a much clearer perspective on the city and the people in it from ground level sometimes. It's humble and alert." She reached into a deep pocket of her worn coat and pulled out a phone so sleek and modern it looked utterly alien in her hand. "And as it happens," she added, her eyes now sparkling with a fierce, intelligent light that sent a surge of adrenaline through my frozen limbs, "a Mr. Mark Chin recently submitted a rather ambitious and highly leveraged business loan application to a certain financial institution where I hold considerable influence. Collateral? A charming little bungalow on this very street. A property I now strongly suspect he has no legal right to pledge." She looked directly at me, a plan already forming behind those sharp eyes. "Now, Sarah, tell me everything again, fully. And let's discuss how we not only get your house back, but how we ensure Mr. Chin and Ms. Miller receive a very public, very thorough education in consequences." Hope, fierce and bright, exploded in my chest, chasing away the despair. The game wasn't over. It had just entered a whole new level. The following weeks were a whirlwind, orchestrated by Eleanor's quiet efficiency and formidable connections. She didn't just offer sympathy, she deployed resources. First, she secured me a room in a discreet, comfortable extended-stay hotel downtown, a world away from the park bench. The view of the city skyline felt like a promise. Then came the lawyers. Not overworked public defenders, but a team of razor-sharp legal eagles from one of the city's top firms, specializing in fraud and real estate litigation. They listened to my story, their expressions shifting from professional concern to barely concealed fury. Eleanor footed the bill without blinking. With her backing, the investigation moved at lightning speed. Forensic accountants descended on the bank records I'd managed to retrieve, meticulously tracing every illicit transfer Mark had made, documenting the siphoned funds, exposing the fake invoices and shell accounts he'd used. Document examiners scrutinized the quitclaim deed and other agreements Jessica and Mark had produced, confirming definitively that my signatures were skillful forgeries. They identified telltale signs invisible to the untrained eye. Meanwhile, private investigators discreetly delved into Jessica and Mark's lives. They gathered evidence of their spending spree, receipts from high-end boutiques, reservations at expensive restaurants, documentation for Mark's new car, even social media posts where Jessica boasted about their good fortune. It painted a clear picture of lifestyle inflation funded by theft. They even tracked down the notary public whose seal was on the forged deed. Faced with evidence of his complicity and the threat of losing his license and facing criminal charges, the notary cracked, providing a sworn affidavit detailing how Mark had paid him a significant sum to notarize the documents illicitly, without me being present, assuring him it was just a family matter. The final piece clicked into place when Eleanor's legal team confirmed Mark had indeed formally applied for that huge, risky business loan using my house as primary collateral. He was leveraging stolen property for a speculative venture that, according to Eleanor's inside sources at the bank, was already riddled with red flags and unlikely to be approved even before the fraud came to light. He was arrogant, sloppy, and digging his own grave with gusto. Eleanor, working behind the scenes with masterful subtlety, ensured the loan application was flagged, buried in procedural delays, and ultimately put on indefinite hold due to irregularities in the collateral documentation. She spoke to influential figures on city planning boards, ensuring any permits Mark might need for his fantasy business venture encountered sudden, inexplicable roadblocks and mountains of red tape. The noose was tightening, slowly, invisibly. As the evidence piled up, a transformation occurred within me. The numb despair gave way to a cold, focused anger. The helplessness morphed into steely resolve. Eleanor became a quiet mentor, guiding me, encouraging me to channel my righteous fury. "Don't let them see weakness, Sarah," she advised during one of our discreet coffee meetings. She often wore simple clothes, blending in effortlessly. "Let them see strength. Let them underestimate you one last time." The perfect stage for the denouement presented itself with almost poetic irony. Jessica, blinded by arrogance and desperate to solidify her new social standing, decided to throw a lavish housewarming party. In my house. Extravagant invitations went out to extended family, including her own bewildered parents, neighbors, Mark's colleagues, anyone they wanted to impress with their ill-gotten gains. And then the ultimate insult. An invitation arrived for me. Tucked inside was a handwritten note from Jessica, dripping with condescending pity. "Sarah, hope you can make it. No hard feelings, okay? Come see all the wonderful improvements we've made. Consider it our way of helping you move on." Helping me move on. My hands clenched. Oh, I would help them move on. Eleanor's lead lawyer, a formidable man named Mr. Harrison, actually chuckled when I showed him the invitation. "Perfect," he declared, his eyes gleaming. "An audience. Let's give them a housewarming gift they'll be talking about for years." The night of the party arrived, cold and clear. I stood across the street for a moment, watching the lights blazing in my house. Loud music and bursts of laughter spilled out into the night air. Through the large living room window, I saw Jessica, preening in a new dress, holding court like a queen. Mark stood near the fireplace, glass in hand, schmoozing with a group of men, looking utterly pleased with himself. They looked so secure, so untouchable. I took a deep breath, smoothed down the simple but elegant black dress Mr. Harrison's assistant had helped me pick out, a stark contrast to the shivering girl in the thin sweater. Mr. Harrison stood beside me, his briefcase seeming heavier tonight. A discreet, unmarked car containing 2 plainclothes officers waited patiently down the block, briefed and ready. Eleanor had declined to attend personally. "Too much drama," she'd said with a wry smile, but her presence felt like an invisible shield around me. Head high, shoulders back, I walked up the path, my path, and pushed open the front door without knocking. The effect was instantaneous. The music seemed to falter. Conversations trailed off into awkward silence. Every head in the crowded room turned towards me. Jessica's triumphant smile froze, melting into confusion, then irritation, then a flicker of alarm. Mark went visibly pale beneath his forced tan. "Sarah," Jessica managed, trying to regain control, her voice tight. I didn't really expect you to show up. How could I possibly miss your housewarming?" I replied, my voice clear and steady, carrying easily over the sudden hush. I walked further into the room, my eyes sweeping over the stunned faces. Neighbors who'd offered me pitying glances, family members who'd perhaps believed Jessica's lies, Mark's colleagues looking bewildered. Mr. Harrison moved smoothly to my side. Actually, Jessica, Mark, I continued, my gaze locking onto theirs, we felt this was the perfect occasion to clear up a few misconceptions about this lovely house, and perhaps about where the money for all these wonderful improvements actually came from. Mark puffed up, trying to bluster his way through. Now, Sarah, this really isn't appropriate. This is a private party. On the contrary, Mr. Chin, Mr. Harrison interrupted, his voice calm but cutting. He clicked open his heavy briefcase. This is entirely appropriate. With deliberate movements, he began laying documents out on the large coffee table that used to be Nana's. Enlarged, high-resolution copies of the forged signatures next to my genuine one. Bank statements highlighting the systematic transfers to their hidden accounts. The sworn, notarized affidavit from the notary public confessing to his role in the fraud. Printouts of Mark's loan application, clearly showing my house listed as collateral he didn't own. A collective gasp went through the room. Jessica's face crumpled, naked panic replacing the smugness. These are lies. Forgeries, she shrieked, her voice shrill. She's lost her mind. She's just jealous of us. Are these lies, Jessica? I asked, my voice dangerously quiet as I held up printouts detailing their recent spending. The new car down payment, the designer handbag, the weekend getaway spa bills, cross-referenced with the dates large sums vanished from my accounts. Is the forensic document examiner's report a lie? Is the notary's confession under penalty of perjury a lie? I turned to the assembled guests, particularly focusing on Jessica's horrified parents. They told you I was unstable, overwhelmed. They claimed they were helping me manage my inheritance. The truth, my voice rang out clear and strong, is that they systematically embezzled my grandmother's legacy, forged legal documents, and fraudulently seized my home, all while pretending to be my loving family. Mark made a sudden move, lunging towards the table as if to sweep the damning evidence away. Mr. Harrison smoothly blocked his path. I strongly advise against that, Mr. Chin, he said mildly. Copies of all these documents, along with considerably more evidence, are already in the hands of the district attorney's office, the police department's fraud division, who have officers waiting outside right now, and of course, he paused for effect, the fraud investigation unit at Ms. Eleanor Vance's bank. The moment Eleanor's name was spoken aloud, Mark froze completely. The blood drained from his face, leaving it a pasty gray. He understood. The connection, the power arrayed against him, the sheer depth of his miscalculation. It all hit him at once. Jessica stared wildly, first at Mark, then at Mr. Harrison, then back at me, comprehension dawning slowly, horribly in her eyes. The color fled her face too. The carefully constructed facade of their success didn't just crack. It imploded. Guests began to physically edge away from them, murmuring amongst themselves, looks of shock hardening into disgust. Jessica's mother, my Aunt Clara, let out a small sob. The party wasn't just over. It was a public crucifixion. As Mr. Harrison calmly began outlining the specific criminal charges they were facing, grand larceny, multiple counts of forgery, wire fraud, conspiracy, potentially elder financial abuse relating to Nana's estate, Jessica finally shattered. A heart-wrenching wail escaped her lips, and she crumpled onto the expensive new rug, sobbing hysterically. Mark just stood there, utterly still, staring sightlessly ahead, a hollow man whose world had just evaporated before his eyes. Watching their downfall, their greed and arrogance stripped bare for everyone to see, it wasn't gleeful triumph I felt. It was a profound, quiet sense of equilibrium being restored. It was justice. Cold, precise, and deeply, deeply satisfying. The immediate aftermath unfolded with a kind of grim efficiency. The plainclothes officers waiting outside entered discreetly at Mr. Harrison's signal. They spoke quietly with him, reviewed the immediate evidence, and then formally cautioned a still sobbing Jessica and a shell-shocked Mark. They weren't physically arrested that night. Mr. Harrison explained that the formal charges filed by the DA's office would carry more weight, but they were sternly warned not to leave the city or attempt to contact me. The remaining party guests practically evaporated, avoiding my gaze, muttering awkward apologies or expressions of disbelief as they hurried out the door. Aunt Clara approached me, tears streaming down her face, stammering apologies, insisting she had no idea that Jessica had always been so convincing. I found I could believe her. Jessica's talent for deceit was, after all, considerable. Within 48 hours, under threat of further legal action, Jessica and Mark vacated my house, taking only their personal belongings under the watchful eye of Mr. Harrison's junior associate. Their brief, parasitic reign was over. The legal battle that followed was less a battle and more a surrender. Faced with the overwhelming, meticulously documented evidence, their lawyers advised them against fighting. They eventually accepted a plea deal. Mark, bearing the brunt of the financial fraud and the attempted loan deception, received a significant prison sentence. Jessica, perhaps leveraging her dramatic courtroom performance and painting herself as Mark's manipulated pawn, a final, pathetic act of self-preservation, managed to avoid prison time but received several years of strict probation, crippling fines, and a court order for substantial restitution payments to me, payments that would likely shadow her for decades. They lost everything. Their reputations were ruined, their social circle vanished, and their financial future was non-existent. As for my house, Eleanor Vance handled it with quiet elegance. When the bank inevitably moved to foreclose due to Mark's loan default and the proven fraudulent collateral, a shell corporation discreetly controlled by Eleanor purchased the property at the ensuing auction for little more than the outstanding taxes. A week later, Mr. Harrison presented me with a new, clean deed. My name, my house. Free and clear. Walking back through the front door, truly my front door this time, was overwhelming. The silence felt different, peaceful, not empty. The faint lingering scent of Jessica's cloying perfume needed airing out, and some of their improvements needed undoing, but the soul of the house felt like it could finally breathe again. Eleanor, with characteristic generosity, quietly funded some necessary work, repairing minor damage they'd caused and restoring the garden, replanting hydrangeas in Nana's memory. Life now is rebuilt, stronger at the foundations. My graphic design business is flourishing, ironically helped along by a few key introductions from Eleanor. Our unlikely friendship remains one of the most precious outcomes of this whole nightmare. We still meet occasionally for coffee, her often arriving in an unassuming coat and hat, me seeing not a billionaire powerhouse, but the sharp, kind woman who saw me at my lowest and offered a hand and a scarf. The scar left by my cousin's betrayal remains. Trusting family, perhaps trusting anyone completely, will always be harder now. But I discovered a resilience within myself I never knew existed. I learned that vulnerability isn't always weakness and that appearances, both of helplessness and of success, can be profoundly deceiving. I learned that sometimes, the smallest gesture of kindness towards a stranger can echo back in ways you could never imagine. Justice wasn't just served. It was delivered with surgical precision. And peace, real, quiet, earned peace, has finally settled back over my little bungalow on the tree-lined street. It's good to be home.